hydrogen is obviously one of the really interesting areas of gas and gas energy and where we're going for the future. It's one of the areas where, it's developing quickly, and a lot of us look at it and go, how's this going to work? It's really fascinating. It's really interesting. It was like, where does it fit in? How's it going to evolve over, next couple of years, let alone the next 30 years? So this panel is really to focus on that question. We've got three presenters who are here actively involved in what New Zealand is doing with hydrogen energy at the moment. We've got Cathy Clennett, who's the chair and co-founder of Hiringa Energy. Many of you will know her. Doull, who's the national manager of hydrogen and eco commercial vehicles for Hyundai in New Zealand, and Bob Weston from Entec. And I think many of you probably know them. They've been around the industry for a while. Cathy is a member of New Zealand Institute of Directors and a founding board member of Launch Taranaki, and she's served on a lot of companies in New Zealand and Australia. She's also on the steering committee for the formation of Araake, established to lead and facilitate the development of low emissions energy innovation and technology in New Zealand. She has, obviously with Hiringa Energy, she has a lot of experience of actually doing energy on the ground here in New Zealand. Doull from Hyundai, he's been in the automotive industry for 35 years. He's held roles ranging from management, sales, technical specialists with companies like Volkswagen, Porsche and Skoda. And at Hyundai, he initially restarted their heavy commercial vehicle business. He's introduced the first hydrogen fuel cell truck to the New Zealand market and the second country in the world to commercialize this vehicle, so he can tell you about that. And Bob Weston started work with Entec Service Limited in 1996. Entec is a distributor for reciprocating gas engines and gas compressors. And in the past 28 years, Bob has been extensively involved in natural gas, biogas and landfill sectors. Entec's been at the forefront of commercialization of biogas and landfill gas in New Zealand as an equipment provider, a turnkey installation contractor and a service provider. And so they have a lot of experience, and they are obviously working to develop hydrogen energy here in New Zealand. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Cathy, who is going to do much of the leading of this session. And she has a video which I think is ready to roll.
Okay, that's it. Oh, thank you, Jeffrey. And good morning, everyone. As Jeff said, I'm going to play a short video which saves you watching impersonations from me of ships and planes and exciting things. And then I have a brief presentation followed by a presentation by both Grant and Bob. Cool, thank you. I'm not sure how many people here actually know our company and aware of us. So I was just wondering, it's maybe a show of hands. Like, great, awesome. So I'm going to go very quickly through this intro. So as you've seen on the video, we actually make green hydrogen. So we're developing renewables, connecting that renewable electricity with hydrogen production through electrolysis, and then also distributing that and developing end markets. So the end markets that we're really focused on are heavy transport and industry. So when you look at hydrogen and the uses and markets for hydrogen, there are a number of ways to analyze this, and you'll see things like Lebesgue's ladder. So it's like a pecking order of the most, I guess, what they consider the most beneficial uses of hydrogen. And this is sort of the way that we look at it as a company. So what we've been looking at is where is the price support and where is the volume support for hydrogen. So if you're looking in that top left-hand corner with light vehicles, really good price support for hydrogen as a replacement for petrol, but there's not really a good market. So getting the scale is a real challenge. So if you're making an investment in new infrastructure, it's very hard to make a return on that infrastructure if you don't have volume. So then the next, I guess, on the pecking order in terms of price is heavy transport. And then we consider heavy transport across all those dimensions. So road transport, off-road transport, shipping and aviation are all forms of heavy transport where hydrogen has a real advantage over other potential technologies. It also has sufficient scale. So the network that we've built here in New Zealand, we had to get to a minimum scale where we knew that we could get a return on that initial investment over time. If we grow the end market, and that's where our partnership with Hyundai and others has come in, where we need to get the trucks on the road and build the volume to be able to pay back that initial investment. Other uses, there are a number of other uses for hydrogen, and it can be quite sort of challenging because it makes it quite easy to pick on hydrogen as well and say hydrogen is not very efficient, it's not very good for this, or it's not very good for that. And it's true that it's not the panacea for every application. So it's a matter of finding the right applications for hydrogen. It doesn't mean that you can't use it for other things like grid firming, for remote power applications, even at the lowest sort of order for export. In terms of our focus area, we're also developing Part-X projects. So Part-X are really what we call derivative products, taking electrons and turning them into chemical products. So the key areas that we're looking at are ammonia. So so we're turning green hydrogen molecules into ammonia molecules, combining with nitrogen from the air. And the other one is e-methanol. So both of those are key derivative products for hydrogen. In terms of export, we do see pure hydrogen export as a future activity, maybe in the long term, if there's a change in technology that enables you to transport pure hydrogen more efficiently. That could be a potential market, but it's definitely something a long way in the future to where we see the derivative products are actually the markets are starting to come together quite quickly. So in our network, we're combining a number of different aspects of hydrogen production, development, and also that distribution. All of our stations have production on site, and we can deliver to each of the other stations. We can accept third-party deliveries at any of our stations as well. And it's all integrated through a proprietary AI platform that we've developed in-house. And the goal of that platform is to really maximize the flexibility of hydrogen to bring down and lower the cost at the pump or to the end user. So the target is to be competitive with a fossil fuel liquid fuel product. Oops. So this is just explaining a little bit more about where we see the role of hydrogen in derivative products. As I said, we've got green methanol products under development and green ammonia as well. And in terms of those markets, like if you look at some of the analysis that I talked about before, like Leverage's ladder, they're looking at a big existing market for hydrogen, and there are existing markets right now that are quite sizable, and hydrogen's used for ammonia production, it's used for hydrogenation of existing fuels, and biofuels is also used in the production of methanol, and that's why we have those industries here in our region, because of our natural gas supply. So we have an abundant supply of hydrogen in our region via natural gas, and therefore there's an existing market also for green hydrogen. However, there's also a lot of barriers to just replacing our existing natural gas produced products with green hydrogen that we need to produce from renewable electricity. And there's an incredible amount of investment that's already in place. So there's a lot of inertia to being able to just transition directly to a renewable fuel. And one of the things that we're trying to solve with our Balance Agri-Nutrients joint venture is actually getting some of that green hydrogen supply into their existing plant and leveraging that infrastructure rather than having to build a new plant, a greenfield plant next to Balance, which is actually quite just a very challenging investment decision for anyone to make. Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, and there's different markets around the world and different locations where it will make sense. And I think longer term, it definitely will make sense as we move into a lower carbon future, and we have incredible resource in New Zealand and in particular our region for making green hydrogen. There's also the potential, which I think is quite relevant for this audience, the potential for integration with biomass and biogas projects, especially when you start talking about e-methanol and other derivative products that require carbon as well. So for example, if you wanted to make eSAF, which you may have heard quite a lot of conversation about, you also need carbon. So the source of your carbon becomes quite important. If you're trying to sell that green methanol to a company like Maersk, you need to have they have quite strict requirements around the source of your carbon needing to be biogenic. It has to be waste. So you need to be able to source the right type of carbon as well. But we're seeing quite a strong driver from our exporters for decarbonising our supply chains at the moment. So our high-value exporters in particular are starting to be asked by the importers in Europe and in other markets about their carbon footprint, and we're starting to see that the implementation of the carbon borders, which is effectively either increasing the cost of those products in their market or locking them out of markets. And they're actually really high margin markets for those exporters. So one of the things that we're seeing in the market here right now is a real desire to set up green shipping lanes and green supply chains for those exporters. So that requires, heavy transport, decarbonisation on road transport as well as in shipping. Oops, sorry. But generally, I guess probably the opening gambit is really there are a lot of long-term benefits to adoption of green hydrogen. Like in our region, we have an abundant resource, wind, solar, water that can be utilised for this. So I think we can develop other export industries. Keep our existing industries, leverage all the capability and talent that we have currently in our region by the virtue of the natural gas-based industry that we have here. There's a lot of complementary skills. We also see that hydrogen has a role to play for New Zealand in terms of balance of trade, being able to have a secure, sovereign supply of your own liquid fuels. Also complementary to electrification. So hydrogen is a store of energy. As we build more renewables, we need more storage in our system as well. So hydrogen can help play a role providing energy storage and also grid support and flexibility for our existing grid while making really good use of our existing electrical infrastructure, because you don't need to be using that during peak periods. So our electrical infrastructure needs to be sized for those peak loads. So you can take advantage of the fact that you don't need to increase your electrical infrastructure, and you can actually utilise that existing infrastructure during lower peak periods. So I guess just to finish off, thank you. And I think we're going to move into the other presentations and a bit of a panel discussion where hopefully we'll get into a bit more detail around barriers and how we've overcome them. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. What have we got here? I think we've got a presentation that will come up shortly, but hey, thank you very much. Hey, I guess one of the first questions is, like Hyundai, why hydrogen? What are we doing here? We're a sort of traditional car brand. Hyundai's been, I think we're 27 years on the journey with hydrogen, so we're one of the first car companies. If we talk to our chairman and owner of the business in South Korea, pretty clever guy, he would view hydrogen as the saviour of all humanity. So he views it pretty highly in his order of priorities, which is why they continue to invest billions of dollars into it. So one of the reasons we're involved here in New Zealand is because our parent company is quite involved. They're making lots of cool stuff, both now and in the future. So, we're on that journey with it. You'll see some of the images on the screen. There's a couple of automotive, like car type products, sports car. We don't really see hydrogen playing in that space. It's a choice in that area. But you'll see most of the developments around the heavy side of things, which is really where hydrogen comes into its own. We've also got some vehicles like you'll see a drone trailer up there, which should be a port type application. There's some quite interesting videos online of that. And of course, we've already got buses and trucks on the road. And I think we're about 60% of the global share of hydrogen vehicles. So we kind of know a little bit about it. I'm just going to skip over a few of the slides. If you want to talk to me about anything later, or feel free to reach out and contact. So just a couple of facts about New Zealand first. So the first fuel cell truck's been on the road. It's probably about 18 months now, which is the New Zealand Post one. So we ran a really good pilot with ECA support. They were fantastic to work with, as were NZ Post. But it's provided a really good baseline of how that's going to work in transport as we scale it up. We've also got the first dual fuel trucks on the road. We don't do dual fuel trucks, but we think it's quite a good way of increasing the demand on hydrogen, and also helps address some of the legacy fleet. So I think there's around 190,000 trucks on the road. There's about 6,000 trucks that get sold each year. So if we do our maths, it's going to take us 31 years if we were 100% zero emission trucks from next year by way of new purchases, which isn't going to happen. So I would say we're moving way too slow. We need to speed up, and we need some stronger policy in that area. Hiringa Obayashi online now producing fuel. I think we'll have H.W. Richardson later in the year, which is terrific. So we're getting some competition, which I think is good. And we're getting some stations and some coverage, which is critical. So we're well on the way. I think New Zealand Hydrogen Council was about 6 members in 2015. We're now 60 plus. If you're not a member of the Hydrogen Council, please send us an email and sign up. We need more members, and it feels like you're the right audience for that. So, and I think from our perspective, Hyundai New Zealand, we're not, it's not this kind of which is going to win the race, what's right, what's wrong. It's just like today, we've got petrol cars, we've got diesel cars, we've got hybrids, we've got battery electric, we've got blah, 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 blah. We're not going to have one solution that solves everything. So same deal going forward. Just a quick touch on a couple of key points for the New Zealand Post trial. So that truck, one of the reasons why hydrogen works so well in heavy transport is because of the productivity that it gives us. So it's 10 to 15 minutes to fuel it. It's got 30 kilos of hydrogen goes in. I mean, at the moment, we've got that going twice a day at the Wiri site, the Hiringa Wiri site. What it means is a driver can start his shift in the morning, he can drive 5.5 hours, he can stop, he can put some fuel in, 400 Ks, he can drive it another 5.5 hours, he can put some fuel in, drive another 5.5 and put some fuel in. So it can basically run 24/7, which gives us high productivity. If it was a battery electric heavy truck, you'd be lucky to get 2 or 3 hours before you have to charge it. So you're starting to eat into driving hours, schedules, these sorts of things. So even with megawatt chargers, it's still, 10 to 15 minutes, and you'd need a 600 kilowatt hour battery on a truck. So 30 kilos of hydrogen gives us 600 kilowatts of energy on board, and that gives us a 400k range with a 42 ton GCM. So it's a very capable, and it sort of models the current diesel model very, very well. Diesel trucks use a lot of diesel. So your average truck is kind of 2 kilometres travelled for every litre of diesel. So you can do your maths around the CO2 it saves. I think each truck we would model between 100 and 150 car equivalents per year. Where are we globally? So as I said, our chairman's got a big belief that it's going to save all of humanity. So they've got quite strong forecasts for hydrogen demand and equipment. We're starting to move away a little bit from just a sole focus around vehicles. So the way they would describe it is we're more into energy than we've ever been as a car company previously, and our car company our energy is also more involved in the car company side. So some examples are they've created quite a bit of a focus now on low carbon hydrogen. So there's some proprietary Hyundai technology in South Korea being trialled with both waste to hydrogen, sewage sludge to hydrogen, and plastic to hydrogen. Indonesia, there's a big project started over there with Hyundai around plastic to hydrogen. So we're sort of shifting that focus in that area. We're also starting to create electrolyzers to bring the cost of PEM electrolyzers down by adding scale and using our current technology. So we're kind of moving out of just that vehicle sector into more supporting areas. One of the main reasons for that is we need the global infrastructure to develop faster, and we need to bring the price of that down, or the cost of that down. The network, I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but it does have a Hiringa map in there for a particular reason. World-class system. I've travelled around a lot. I've had a lot of hydrogen discussions, and the way that we're doing it in New Zealand couldn't be better. So I said to Cathy before, it was obviously by brilliant design from their team, a lot of young, clever people, and a couple of people with some grey hairs, which add a bit of wisdom to it. But the system that we've got in New Zealand, so for our, let's say we've got reticulated renewable energy, we've got water, we've got a long and narrow country that's only about 1,600 kilometres long. Most of our heavy transport follows a similar route, so we can kind of cover the whole network with 28 stations. We've probably got the lowest cost green hydrogen in the world, the system that we've got. The thing that adds cost is transport. So if we can get, relatively good electricity supply, let's say the plant and the equipment is actually pretty cheap if you compare it to, trying to run out megawatt chargers around the country. So we can sort of cover the whole country with 28 odd stations, and it's just brilliant. But I don't think us as a nation really quite understands the opportunity that's in that versus a lot of other countries. And I think one of the mistakes we often make is you keep looking overseas and they say, we're going to build this big hydrogen hub and we've got to do this, and then we'll shift it somewhere by truck and we'll convert it to, to ammonia, and we'll take it here and take it there and put it in pipes. The way they're doing it here, it's brilliant. It's the best system, micro hubs, and that's for transport support, I should say. Best system for supporting transport, and that's where it's going to first kick in. And there's a bunch of other things. We also see it helping drive, perhaps the EV recharging network at the same time. So I guess one of the analogies that we've got, or basically top of the Bombay Hills is major recharging point. I drove up there in an electric car at 9:30 in the morning. Nothing else was plugged in. The most I could get was 40 kilowatts into my car that could take 200 kilowatts. I was plugged into the 350 kilowatt recharger. You could go to the other station and the other station, and they're all the same, and it's because there wasn't enough energy in the grid at that time, so everything's dialed right back. So we would see the likes of the Hiringa sites or other companies that implement the same system, being able to boost electricity in times of peak demand. So I think there's a lot of things that can be quite complementary if we think and develop it further. Our own focus, so obviously we want to scale up more trucks, more demand, but we've also got a couple of key marine projects that are really close. So moving into the marine sector, stationary generation or power generation where the grid can't reach. So we've done some nice, marketing showcases this year using Hayden Paddon and his electric rally car. We were at Ashley Forest a couple of weeks ago where we had our hydrogen fast charger in the middle of the forest environment, clean and green. Normally we'd have to use diesel for that, but it was perfect size for fast charging of EV cars where the grid couldn't reach, or some kind of backup power. And as you can see, we're working on lots of really cool stuff. Flying car, that's going to be battery and hydrogen. Backup power banks, trams, etc., etc. So that's my lot. Thank you very much. Right. Bad start.
In 2 months, they told me not to.
Good morning, everybody. A lot of familiar faces in the room. Bob Weston from Entec. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. So Entec I refer to it as my fourth child, and quite often it's my favourite child. I could speak about Entec for the rest of the day, but we need to have panel discussions, so I'm going to do the very, very quick version. And another disclaimer, I'm not the technical person at Entec, I'm just the business guy. So we've got some really clever people that work with Cathy's team that pulled it all together. And you need to ask all the really techie questions to Cathy, not to me. Sorry, Cathy. So we're 42 years old as a business. 10 years ago, we were about 80% of our revenue came from the oil, gas and petrochemical sector. We saw that as a real exposure, and we started on a very deliberate diversification path, and obviously New Zealand being on a decarbonisation path has worked out as really good timing for us. So we're involved in all sorts of different things in different sectors now. We've managed to grow our oil, gas, petrochem business by about double in 10 years, and we've managed to grow the 20% that wasn't oil, gas, petrochem by 7 times. So we're now down to about 30 to 40% revenue out of the traditional sector, and it's a really good place for us to be. So again, I could tell you stories about all of those customers, good positive stories, but I won't. So what we look like at the moment, we've got around 140 people, predominantly here in Taranaki. About 110 of them are based out of here. We've got a very new presence, only 2 years in Taupō, and we're at about 16, I think, staff up there at the moment. That's another big piece of our decarbonisation journey. So our big customers there are Contact Energy and Mercury Energy on their geothermal assets, and a small office in Auckland. And what we do a whole bunch of things, but the biggest piece of our business is electrical and instrumentation installation work. So projects from the very small to the reasonable size. In terms of hydrogen, it was such a great fit. So I first heard of Hiringa just after the company was founded. I had known Cathy's husband Andy vaguely in his former role at Todd Energy, and I was at a downstream conference in Auckland, and he did a presentation that looked very much like the one that you did today. That's been the original vision, and you're still heading there. And so I was hearing it's going to need gas compression, and we do gas compression. It's going to be hazardous area by nature, we do that. A lot of instrumentation, electrical, we do that. And we even have a large gas detection business as well, and there's obviously gas detection equipment involved. So it felt like a marriage made in heaven, and over the last 7 years or so, we've formed a really, really close partnership with our good friends at Hiringa. Cathy failed to mention that they won one of the awards at the Energy Excellence Awards about 2 months ago for the low carbon impact, I think it was. Yeah, so we had 10 people from our team sitting alongside and celebrating with them. So they're doing such a great job, and we're really proud to be supporting it. A couple of other things we've done recently. So we're currently working with First Gas. They're putting some new compression into their transmission station at Kaitoki. We had quite a large involvement in that. A couple of geothermal projects there, and also had a large crew over at Panpac for about 9 months, helping rebuild the mill after the cyclone went through last year. So quite a variety of work. And we love building trailers too. We don't build them ourselves, but we fit them out ourselves. So that bottom picture became the site office / workshop / smoko room for the Hiringa sites as we went from Te Rapa to Wiri to Palmerston North and Tauriko next. Really good place to stand on a cold rainy day in Te Rapa. And I think, that was all I wanted to share. Over to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you all. So look, there was some really interesting content in there. The things that just stood out for me there were with three statements. First is that we in New Zealand potentially have the lowest cost hydrogen in the world. I think that's a really interesting factoid, which we could possibly test out a bit. Two, and I think it's an important one, that hydrogen is not the panacea for every application. I think that's obvious, and it does fit in with the first statement that it's all about the cost. And then I am intrigued that the chairman of Hyundai thinks that hydrogen will save humanity. That's fairly bold. So let's try and unpack some of that, because I think the niches that hydrogen might fit in, and how fast the industry could grow in New Zealand, and which niches it could fill in an economically sensible way as part of the overall energy system. It's something that most of us who aren't in the industry wonder about and would like to dig into some more. So I guess, what do you, as the people who are most closely working here, see as some of the barriers to hydrogen moving into the right niches for it? And Cathy, perhaps I can start with you. What are the types of barriers that you're experiencing and that you think can be addressed, and how have you been addressing those? Do we need a mic, or are they okay to speak up loud? Have you got one? Okay, you're going to have to come up here.
Yeah.
Otherwise we're not going to hear you. No, we won't get you on the video if you don't come up here, so. I've been there, done that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess in terms of barriers and overcoming them, there's been a number right across the value chain, and one of the key aspects to overcoming them for us as a company has been really strong partnerships. So without having partners like Bob and Entec actually delivering and working with us to make sure that we're delivering a really good design and executing that well, it's very hard to make this work. Our commercial partners, we've got vehicle partners like Grant and other vehicle suppliers, as well as we have a couple of other key partners. TR Group is one of the largest vehicle owners or truck owners in the country, and they've been a really good partner right through what's been sometimes a challenging process, securing vehicles to come onto the network, and taking quite a lot of risk as well to bring them together and place significant orders and secure the end customers for those vehicles. And then also sort of in the upstream space as well. So I think we just have to partner right through as a small company and work with all the different parts of the value chain. In terms of there's a lot of different barriers, but I was thinking maybe I could actually talk about some of the things we've overcome. It's probably a nice, positive way to think about it. So because there's a number of things, like bringing the cost down to a point where we can get the uptake in the market was been a significant focus of our business from day one. And having that fully integrated approach where we've got, and building that data platform to be able to leverage the flexibility of hydrogen has been a really key thing to be able to do that. Also, equipment design. So we spent a lot of time up front on that equipment design. We were fortunate we did have some government support for that as well. And ordering at a sufficient scale, volumes to drive that cost down as well, and actually in the operations. So we're not doubling up on equipment purchases. So a lot of stations overseas were sort of doubling up, had full redundancy at each station rather than in our network. We carry spares across our network, for example. So there's lots of ways that we're everywhere we can, we're trying to be as efficient as possible to get our costs down, and that's one of the reasons we've got to that point. So, and you look at the US, and they're significantly more expensive, and it's grey hydrogen. It's not green.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And Bob, perhaps if I can kind of fire the same question to you, maybe from a more technology point of view.
The dance.
Yeah, I was hoping to be able to respond to that too. So our role was to be the guys and the girls in the overalls, putting it all together. And there were definitely some new work practices required. There's extremely high pressures involved in the hydrogen refueling equipment. The quality level that we're used to working at in traditional oil, gas, petrochem is really, really high, and hydrogen actually demands it to be higher again in terms of the cleanliness of the fuel. Hydrogen is notoriously the smallest molecule and just loves to escape. So there's a few additional work practices that we had to learn around that, but that was just evolutionary. That wasn't revolutionary. So that was manageable. The other thing that we've noticed for decades, long before we started working with Hiringa, is that a lot of international equipment OEMs see New Zealand as very remote and very small, and not somewhere that they want to put new technology, because if there are any issues, warranty, etc., it's difficult for them to support it. So Cathy's team selected the technology providers that they wanted to work with, and we got introduced to them at that point, and we're able to tell them our story, which is that we've been a equipment OEM representative in New Zealand for more than 40 years. We understand how those relationships work, and we send people over there for factory training. I went and visited them myself, and gave them some confidence that there was a good support infrastructure here, and that's worked really well. So we have become a kind of we've had kind of delegated responsibilities from them in some cases to commission their equipment and do fault finding and so on. So again, it's just that, the old, the shoe leather and spending time on airplanes to go and visit people actually makes a big difference. Okay.
Grant, did you want to pitch in there as well?
I've only got a couple of points. I'd say. So I think the first thing is long-term policy is a barrier. So what we're talking about, we know that heavy transport is a large consumer of hydrogen. So it's a great initial driver to form a base for the whole sector. I guess the challenges we got are that policy is not long-term. So it's not cross-party policy, but if you're going to buy $500,000 truck or $1 million truck or a fleet of trucks you're going to gear up, you need to know that it's a stable business decision over a long period of time. So we need to form some kind of stable roadmap with the long-term vision and policies that are not going to get picked up by one government and dropped by another, a little bit like what we've seen with the Clean Car program. We're well on the way with that, and then we've got another government that wants to play a few politics and, get a few people to vote the other way. But the reality is they've all got the same goals, but what they're doing is they're mucking around with the industry and the customers' confidence. So we need some long-term policy. The other thing is diesel's too cheap. We don't really value carbon very highly. So, how the hell can we achieve our goals of this carbon reduction program when we don't value carbon? It's like saying, New Zealand, please stop smoking, but we're going to reduce the price of cigarettes to you. Like it's $1.40 a litre or something for diesel at the moment. When we first started this program, we were at $2.40 a litre for diesel. And we could see parity somewhere in that situation. So the cost side, we need to reach commercial parity. We're solving a commercial problem. And the two big issues I see around long-term government policy, so that people can invest in this tech, both consumers and investors in the stations. And like I said, it's ridiculous to be trying to head down this path and make diesel cheaper, So that's it.
Great. Cool. Thank you. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that we may be invaded by people coming up for, morning tea breaks and so on. But I want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions. I have more, but I'm sure you guys have got questions to ask. So, we have a hand up here already. Speak up loudly, please.
Yeah, what's the cost per litre before hydrogen becomes viable? Especially on
Cost per litre before hydrogen becomes viable? Per litre of hydrogen? Or diesel?
Diesel, I mean, based it today, I think it would be about $3 a litre or something like that. Lower, you'd say 250?
Yeah.
If you can do 250, that's great. So it's not far away, right?
250 a litre?
Just a question on that MBIE sort of funding model, between you and HW Richardson, with the rollout. We typically, in a government, MBIE, typical to run two against each other. How have you found the collaboration? I question the thing about the last bit that you presented about 60 members for the hydrogen council, now at 60. And where does GasNZ in that competitive model fit as doing the same thing, having the same message at the same time? How do we bring this competitive New Zealand model together into collaboration? I quantify it like meridian energy, right? So, how big our project was when we canned it. So, and we're coming into the Taranaki pretty heavily at the moment, so we'll be the energy provider on that thing. But I just some physical things that I notice in New Zealand. We love competition, but we forget about the big collaboration. So I'm challenging you.
So the question there is, how do we collaborate? And Cathy, you can't hear, so
This comment about MB, but I'm not quite sure because we have a loan, so we've had support from ECA, and we have a loan with ECA for the refuelling network, and I know that HWR's also got support, but I don't know that it was actually, I'm not sure how strategically that was thought about, but from our perspective, we collaborate with HWR as well, and they're bringing dual fuel technology to the market. So we're filling their trucks at our stations. So we have a working relationship and collaborating on a number of levels. So I think we need to be actually driving all solutions and all companies that are trying to do this forward. You can't sort of set up right now true competition in this market. It's a really nascent, small market at the moment, and it needs support at the moment. But you had other questions about on the hydrogen council.
Just on the hydrogen council versus GasNZ, where's the level of collaboration?
Yeah. So
and if it's sit on your list, and what's it on the list within GasNZ? Are we the same people? That's the whole thing.
So from the GasNZ perspective, I'll say we don't see ourselves as in competition. We see ourselves in collaboration. And Grant and I are actually sitting down quite soon to talk about exactly that. And when I was talking about GasNZ working on a gas roadmap, we have specifically identified all the great work that's already been done, like the hydrogen roadmap that's been done. We have no intention of reinventing the wheel. We want to work with the people who've already done the work to make the boat go faster. Do you want to add anything to that, Grant?
No, not really. I'd say the only thing is, at the moment, I heard it downstairs this morning, government is calling for industry to align, and the sooner we align and the stronger and more purposeful our path is, the more support we're going to get from government. So the more that we fiddle around in the own sort of ponds, the longer it's going to take to get in any direction. So
can I just ask around the 58-tonne level, Brian, is there any hope? I know that the heights on trucks obviously aren't an option now, but is there any hope at the heavier payloads?
yeah, absolutely. I would say the short-term solution for that is jet fuel, where you can get maybe 30-40% reduction in your CO2, or diesel consumption to be precise. For us, we need our next generation of fuel cells, so we need to go to our 200 kilowatt fuel cells. We'll be increase to 400 kilowatts on board to maintain the energy that we need for 58, 60 tonne. I think there's also some quite good arguments around changing how those fleets are used. But yeah, 100% happy.
How far away would that be?
I would see it sometime 27. So what we need to do today is get going, we need to get the stations running, we need to get the base built, we need to get the familiarity. So we need to use what we've got in the niches that we've got to advance and build a base so that we can attract those other products to New Zealand and Australia. Because Australia also needs 60, 70, 80 tonne solutions. So.
Right. I've got a couple of questions to you, one there and then one there.
I'm just interested in the barriers that come through the cycling or the locations that you place for your hydrogen, and also along the public perception of hydrogen in terms of safety.
Who wants to answer that? Up here at the microphone, please.
Yeah, so each site has its own resource consent, and that goes through each of the councils. So we have invested quite a lot of time with all the different councils around the country, educating them around hydrogen and hydrogen safety. We actually, every single one's gone through very smoothly, but it did require a lot of detailed work to make sure that was the case. And then each site, we have information for all the neighbouring businesses and invited them to each of the sites. So they're quite familiar, and I think it is really just, it's an education thing around hydrogen, because all of our fuels you have to manage safely. They can all be dangerous, and hydrogen's no different, but in terms of needing to understand it and having the right safety protocols and procedures around how you manage hydrogen. So that's been a big focus for our team as well. And obviously working with the regulators and WorkSafe. But that has definitely been an in-depth process, and we do need change. That's one area that we do need change around our regulatory system, and because we have to operate under exemptions right now because our codes are designed for natural gas, not for hydrogen, and not for these applications.
And there was a question down the back there.
I think you heard right, you were talking about $2.50 was your target pricing. In terms of getting to that, is it CapEx that needs to change in terms of technology, or is it OpEx in terms of water treatment, power pricing, or is it, or even if you have to pick one, which is the one that's more challenging to get down to the price?
Yeah, that's a really complicated question to answer.
Why don't you reframe the question and ask the question you want?
The biggest input operating cost is electricity. So having that access to renewable electricity is really important, and we need to build more renewables. In terms of the CapEx right now, that's also been a barrier, and bridging the gap between the investment in infrastructure and the demand as well. So, vehicle uptake, it's not predictable. How long is it going to take, and how long, your working capital requirements around that, and future investment timing is sort of still a key challenge that we're dealing with. So how do we put expansion capacity and new stations in place and make equipment orders 18 months ahead of trucks that can be converted in 2 or 3 days? Did
you have a question?
Yeah, so I guess also looking at the hydrogen social issue, it's from where I see our current point, we are actually at the point where it's time to act. And now it's, how do you think we can tell the story better that this is a productivity home run from a reducing imports perspective, this is a energy storage and integration with the electricity sector home run, this is a solution to so many of the big problems that New Zealand's having at the moment. But we don't seem to have the profile that matches the solution.
So for those of you that couldn't hear, Tom's question is, this is a real good news story, how do we tell it better? Who wants to take that? Cathy does. Yeah,
we're trying really hard, and I think some of the engagement with the current government has actually been really positive. But you're right, this is an issue for now. It's not something for another 5 years' time, because we won't get there if we don't start moving now. And we've got quite a few headwinds. Like the economic environment isn't great. We know that we need policy support, and the current government doesn't like the idea of subsidies. So that's a bit of a dirty word, but that's actually what would start things moving quicker right now. But they are trying to move all the regulatory barriers out of the way, which is also sort of helpful if it's done in the right way. But I think getting the story out you're 100% right. Like, it is great for the country. I think there is some recognition of that, but it's like, how do you then get the benefit once people start to realise there is a benefit? Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there's a role for GasNZ
and Hydrogen Council, I'm sure. Okay. Do we have any last question? I do have one question. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that offshore wind would kind of, kickstart the capacity for hydrogen in New Zealand. But obviously, offshore wind requires a massive investment in all kinds of infrastructure. Is that something which any of you think is a realistic possibility, and would it in fact be a game changer for hydrogen for New Zealand? Or is that a silly question to be asked?
I think the more plentiful and low-cost green electricity you have in New Zealand, the better. From a hydrogen perspective, I think hydrogen electrolyzers are agnostic as to where the fuel comes from, whether it's a solar farm or an offshore wind farm or whatever. So,
Great.
I think Bob sort of summed it up. There seems to be this, let's say this real understanding now that for us to succeed going forward as a country, we need to overbuild electricity anyway. So regardless of where the solutions come from, we need to build extra capacity and where it comes from, as long as it's renewable. But I also think we shouldn't limit ourselves to electrolyzed hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst that is one avenue, I think we should be open to low carbon hydrogen as well and alternatives.
Yep.
Because that's still.
I see lots of nodding. There's lots of nodding going on.
They're still created within New Zealand. They still provide a lot of the same solutions.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of clever ways that we can do things. For transport, I think the way that we're doing it is there's no other way. But for some of the other sectors, I think it's particularly interesting.
Okay, look, I'm going to Tom's got one last question that he's going to stand up and turn around so everyone can hear the question.
And so that in what?
The technology solutions that instigate the demand is now there with the ability to transport to transition existing trucks. So now we're looking at what is the challenge that lies in front of us. This is a huge opportunity where demand can be created in a week in transporting a truck. We can convert it massively. How do we tell that story to the people who are building renewable energy? And how do we enable the likes of Hiringa to actually get confidence to build at the same pace, because we need to do all this all at once. So how do we get that last little bit across the line that the demand is there now?
I think it's engaging with the transport operators as well, the end users. I think we're all just trying to work out how to make it commercial with our customers pay for that premium. So it feels like it's a multi-pronged approach, but you have to work with the end users that will be doing the conversions.
Just on that, you've got a challenge, do you? I know our embedded emissions on our wind farm that we've just done in Hawke's Bay. I know how much per turbine, how many tonnes per turbine, and I look at the saved emissions that you're doing converting diesel. And two, we need you to be telling us that story, because we need this, to do Hawke's Bay again. What you can save in diesel fuel offsets our embedded emissions that we've got to do, even to turbine in the year. So I'll put a real challenge to you on that fact, because, it's all published.
So the answer is communicate better.
Yeah. We're all doing our best.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'm going to wrap us up there. Is it do we have a way to get out to the morning tea without going through the session downstairs? Can we go out that door there and down? Okay, so let's all head out that way downstairs to morning tea, just in case they're still going downstairs.
You're right.